Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. This is the 3-Month Vacation. I'm Sean D'Souza. A few billion years ago, something quite amazing and destructive occurred on the Earth. Oxygen was produced for the first time. If you were to go back into Earth's history, you'd choke and die quickly. And that's because the Earth's atmosphere mostly consisted of nitrogen, water vapor, carbon dioxide, plenty of carbon dioxide from all of those erupting volcanoes. And yes, methane. And then, between 2.3 to 2.4 billion years ago, life began to undergo an amazing transformation on the ocean floor. A bunch of photosynthetic microbes, they called them cyanobacteria. They started harnessing the sun's energy and converted that carbon dioxide and water into food. And what was the waste product of these cyanobacteria? Yes, it was oxygen. Life-harnessing bacteria began to spread to any surface in the sea and create huge amounts of oxygen. But this oxygen didn't go very far. The oceans were packed with dissolved iron. And you know what happens when iron mixes with oxygen? Sure you do. You get rust. The oceans literally rusted for hundreds of millions of years, and the iron sucked up all the available oxygen. After about 700 million years of rusting, the oceans ran out of iron. There was just one minor issue. The cyanobacteria were still producing immense amounts of oxygen. So where would all this oxygen go? Into the atmosphere. That's where it all went. The oxygen had to escape and it made its way into the Earth's atmosphere. In the billion years that were to follow, the Earth began to change from a place where you could hardly breathe to one that had a bounty of oxygen. Something similar applies when you're dealing with testimonials for your business. At first, the testimonials you get are weak, almost impossible to use. Then as time passes, you get the 6 questions that you find in the brain audit, and you'll get testimonials that are more oxygenated. And the reason why you need this 17-question testimonial is because it catapults your testimonial into an experience. Instead of just reading yet another testimonial, the prospect feels the ups and downs, the twists and the turns, and then the final result. So what are these 17 questions all about? If you've read the brain audit, you know there are 6 questions, and those 6 questions get a pretty good testimonial. Well, now we're looking for an experience, and for that we need 17 questions. The 17 questions are listed in the transcript below this, so don't worry about it. What we're covering today are the aspects of those 17 questions and how to get them right. If you've tried to get those 6 questions, you know how hard it is. How do you go about the 17 questions as well? Well, the 3 things that we're going to cover are 1. Why do you need to send instructions before asking the questions? 2nd, creating compartmentalization. And the 3rd, why it's a mistake when you don't send examples. Let's start out with the first one, which is why you need to send instructions. Yesterday, my wife Renuka was filling in a form for an online visa. She'd fill in a page of details only to be confronted with yet another. And then she'd fill the second page, and then the third one would show up. It would ask for the mother's name, the father's name, the previous visa number. Details after details popped up, to the point of frustration. When you're asking clients for a testimonial, it's hard enough when you ask them a few questions, but 17 questions, that kind of form can be pretty tiresome, which is why you need to prepare the client in the first place. This preparation calls for instructions. When we ask clients for a testimonial, we forget one important fact. We forget that for many, if not most of the clients, giving testimonials is not a common activity. Even if they've agreed to give you a testimonial, the sight of 17 questions may appear a little over the top. Yet, without that voluminous amount of detail, you're unlikely to draw out the entire experience. To make sure that the plan goes well, you have to prepare the client. It's important to send them the information in advance. Whether the testimonial is done via the phone, in person, via the internet, you need to make sure that the client knows that they're going to go through the 17-question testimonial. And if you suspect the client is going to be reluctant to write, you should immediately reach for the phone or meet them in person. There is a big advantage to getting a testimonial over the phone. When we write, we tend to edit. And if the client is sitting down to write answers to a bunch of questions, you're asking him to invest a lot of time, not in just writing, but editing as well. On the phone and in person, you don't have such a problem. The client is merely answering a bunch of questions and is likely to be happy to speak for about 10 to 12 minutes. In comparison, a written testimonial may take over 45 minutes. It may take over an hour. Which is why you need to let the client know that you'd like to speak to them and that you'll be recording the session. And this is the first level of preparation involved. The second level seems minor, but it's just as important. When clients agree to giving a testimonial, I also send them this information. This is what I say. This isn't just a testimonial. It's more of a case study describing your ups, your downs, your final result. The experience is what counts. And so I would really like you to answer these questions in as much detail as possible. Short, one-line answers become pretty useless as they lack detail. They can't really be used, so I'd prefer you put in as much detail as possible in your answers. The detail helps me understand your journey better, and it's also a really good ego booster. So I would appreciate the maximum amount of detail in the answers. And so that's what I write to the clients as a kind of cover note. Because there's no reason to have a twiggy, anemic testimonial. You want one that's well-rounded, full of juicy experiences and stories. And when you put the client in a situation where they can quickly give you the information via the phone or in person, you've made that first and most important move. And when you bring up the issue of detail, you're priming them to be effusive. And yes, it does make for some pretty cool testimonials. If the testimonial isn't via the phone or in person, things get a little dicier. Well, not quite. It really depends on what you've delivered in terms of product or services. If a client buys a product like Chaos Planning, which is available on our website, it's a short, intense book, and there's really no point in asking the client 17 questions. However, if there's a lot of involvement and it's a long, drawn process, you're more than likely to get a far better response. Let's say you're a web designer. You've just spent 2 months of back and forth movement building a client's website. Now there's been a bit of a relationship, and it's far more likely that an email set of questions will work. We tend to use the 17 questions only for courses. So as you know, we conduct courses such as the cartooning course, the article writing course, copywriting, first 50 words. Now, these aren't courses where you just sign up and then the teacher disappears. These are pretty hands-on courses, and with just a few clients, a ton of back and forth is involved. To give you an example, in the 2016 article writing course, we have our normal limit of 25 participants. And we're in week 8 of the course, and we have generated over 9,375 posts. So it's impressive because it's over 1,000 posts per week. But what's important to note here is the involvement. If the client gets fully involved, then it's more than likely that either a phone call or an online questionnaire will get a really good response. Of course, if you have 25 clients, it's better to have them answer via an online medium because the exercise gets very complicated. You have to figure out the available timings, the time zones, and anyway, the exercise takes too many days. But if you have just a few clients, it's a better idea to use the phone or record via Skype. We started this journey to get our 17-question testimonial, but we realized there was a lot more to consider. We realized that planning the strategy and choosing whether to use the phone or the online questionnaire is important. And that while the online questionnaire is definitely less time-consuming, it also depends upon the involvement of the clients. The more involved, the more they are likely to give you great testimonials for such a lengthy questionnaire. Now, this takes us to our second part, which is creating compartmentalization. We ask ourselves, do we really need 17 questions? Could we do with just 13? Or could we go to 19? The answer lies in the logic. What are you trying to achieve? That's what we'll have a look at next. If we were to head back in time to Japan, no, not 2.4 billion years ago, but closer, about the 12th century, you'd have run into quite a different sort of evolution. And it's the start of the bento box. During the Kamakura period, dried meals or hoshii was introduced, and bento was nothing more than a small bag to store dried rice. But if we speed through the Azuchi Momoya period in the 17th century, we find bento boxes everywhere. Wooden lacquered boxes that consisted of rice and chestnut and seafood and mushrooms and pickles. And yes, bamboo shoot. That's what a bento box does best. With all those tastes and textures and different types of food, it's critical to compartmentalize the food. Similarly, if you want to get results with your 17 questions, you have to compartmentalize the questions so that each set tackles different issues. Let's look at the compartments for one of our courses. So this is how we split it up. The compartments are the experience, the elements, the teaching system, comparison, advice, recommendations, and any other comments. So what we're looking at is what are those little boxes? And in the experience, what happened before the course? What happened during the course? What happens on completion of the course? The elements of the course. What does the group consist of? How did they interact? How did the forum work for you? How did the notes work for you? How did the audio work for you? So you're looking at the elements of that course. Then the teaching system. How's it taught? What's the responsiveness of the teacher? And so on, you go to every compartment. The experience, the elements, the teaching, the comparison, the advice, the recommendations, and then finally, any other comments. So you've created this little bento box, and when we ask these 17 questions, what's really vital is this creation of this compartmentalization. You need to create those compartments for your own product or service first. before considering what to put in those individual boxes. So if we were to go back to the web designer, what would the compartments look like? It would look remarkably similar. You would start off with the experience, which is before, during, and completion of the website. You would look at the elements of the website, like the layout or functionality, the ease of use. You'd look at dealing with the developers, which is similar to the teaching system. So with the teaching system we had, how's it taught? With dealing with the developers, what was the responsiveness? What were the ease of instructions? And so on. So you get the experience, the elements of the website, dealing with the developers, comparison, the advice, the recommendations, and any other comments. While most of the compartments of the bento box have already been created for you, you may still need to work on a compartment of your own. You may need to add or subtract, or even change some of the questions. This compartmentalization, it allows us to get the information we need, and it allows the client to see at a glance what they're expected to answer. We started out this journey by sending out the instructions in advance. We then moved into compartmentalization. And if you stopped right at this point, you're likely to get an outstanding testimonial. But why stop here? Why take the chance that something might still go wrong? The way to ensure a mind-blowing testimonial is to do one little thing, and that is to send an example. Let's say I step into a bar. I have no intention of drinking that cold glass of beer. But there, in front of me, is someone drinking a cold glass of beer. Guess what happens next? The reason why I'm sipping beer is because of this mirror effect. The mirror effect also plays out to your advantage when you're getting a client to give you a 17-question testimonial. To understand why the mirror effect is so important, we simply have to take away the example. Now the client has no benchmark. So let's say you've sent them an example of another client answering those 17 questions. Then they have a benchmark. You take it away, they have no benchmark. And their testimonial can be similar to what you're expecting, or it could go wildly off course. A simple way to solve this problem is to send an example. As you'd expect, the example will be long, it'll be detailed, and the moment you send it to the client, they realize what is expected of them. But there are always exceptions, even with clients. You may send them the example, and then they will still give you a very terse testimonial. There's not really much you can do in that case. And you're not going to run that testimonial. However, most clients will have a look at the example, and then they'll proceed to give you one which is just as good. But what if you don't have an example in the first place? Well, it's a good question, but the answer is more than obvious. You have to be persistent and go in search of a client who's willing to give you that testimonial. Just throwing up your hands in the air and saying, "Oh, I don't have this testimonial." Well, that's not going to help you. If you need to do an assignment free of cost just for the sake of the testimonial, then make sure it's done. Without that example testimonial in place, you can still get good 17-question testimonials, but an example almost always guarantees great results. And that brings us to the end of the third part. So now it's time for a summary. So what did we cover today? The first point was one of instructions. When you gave a client instructions well in advance, you made life very simple for them, or at least less difficult. Letting them know that they need to give lots of details is very important. Without the detail, you may have a testimonial, but not that complete experience. The whole purpose of the 17-question testimonial is for it to be like an oxygenation event. It needs to bring to life that testimonial. It needs to bring it in a dramatic manner. The issue of phone versus online questionnaire is also something that pops up. Now, using the phone is far superior because if you have fewer clients, you can talk to them and get to know them a lot better. If you have a large number, then you have to make sure it's online, it's through email, it's through some online system. Otherwise, it may take too much time, it'll never get done. The second point that we covered was the compartmentalization. You need to split up the main facets into something resembling a bento box. For us to break up the things into the experience, the teaching system, the comparison, the advice, these are all the compartments in your bento box. And your compartments may be slightly different, but they'll be remarkably similar to what you see in the transcript below. All you need to do is sit down and create the compartments before putting in the questions. And you put in the questions in each of these compartments. You can have fewer than 17 questions, you could possibly have more. But 17 questions are enough. We've filled up entire booklets. Just the article writing course has a prospectus, and that prospectus has over 80 pages of testimonials. And believe me, we haven't put in all the testimonials. So with this compartmentalization, you can send it to the client, they get it done, and now you have a great experience on paper. The final point is one of examples. When you send an example to a client and she can see the example, it's a form of instruction. She knows what's expected of her, and in most cases, she will deliver accordingly. Without an example, a client may meet your expectation, but they may also go wildly off course. They may go off in some weird direction. They may not meet your quota. It might be very anemic. So the example shows them what's expected of them. The example creates that mirror effect, and it's your job to provide that mirror. So what's the one thing that you can do today? Well, compartmentalization, that's what you can do. You can start off with the boxes. Now, if you look at the transcript below, you will notice the different compartments, and you create your own compartments and then create questions under those compartments so that you have the questions to ask your client. And this is how you create this amazing testimonial. You want a testimonial that is absolutely astounding. Now, you might also want to read the book, The Secret Life of Testimonials. And this is available on the website. The Secret Life of Testimonials is a book that goes into a lot of detail about testimonials. It's a fascinating book. When I started to write this book, I didn't realize that it was going to go into like 100 pages. I think it's 100 pages. I think it's more than 100 pages. To read a book just about testimonials and to have it so many pages long means that I got really interested in it. And I think you will find it very useful. Why is it called The Secret Life of Testimonials? Well, I was watching The Private Life of Plants by David Attenborough at the time. And again, that was really fascinating, and that inspired me to come up with The Secret Life of Testimonials. So there you have a little background on how it came about. And I've been watching David Attenborough and the episodes that he has created, and he continues to create for months and years on end. But recently I started watching Ian Stewart, and Ian Stewart's stuff is really cool. He's a geologist, and I found out I'm a geologist at heart because that's what I do. I like to have this one topic which is 1 inch wide and 1 mile deep, which is like the testimonials that I was talking about. And that's what Stewart does. He covers these topics that are just mind-boggling. You should go to Amazon and download The Rise of the Continents, and I promise you, you will be fascinated with the information. You will be fascinated with the fact that you didn't know all this stuff about how the continents were created. And it sounds like this dry and boring subject, like testimonials, but it's fascinating. So, The Rise of the Continents by Ian Stewart. I've been watching everything that he has to offer. And this is the magic. This is the magic of how clients get attracted to you They find you one little episode somewhere, one little article somewhere, one little testimonial somewhere, and then suddenly they're just hooked onto everything that you can sell. I mean, clients come into Psychotactics site from, I don't know, Google, some other site, and they read one article and the second article and the third article, and we tell them to do that. We don't put in these stupid pop-ups. I mean, I know that pop-ups double your whatever, but I don't really care. I want you to read. I want you to get absorbed in it. And then you read the testimonials and then you go, wow, this is amazing. I have to buy stuff. So people buy one little book and the second little book, and then suddenly they're in 5000 BC, and then they're members of 5000 BC, and then they stay there for years on end. And they end up doing courses. Now, courses are not cheap. They're $2,000, $3,000. And yet, it's filled to the brim every single time, even though it's so expensive. And talking about courses, there are 2 of them coming up. The first is the Da Vinci course. Now, this is the cartooning course, and you think, I'm never going to be able to draw cartoons, but I would say you were wrong. And the reason why I can say you're wrong is because we've had so many people who couldn't draw or believe that they couldn't draw, and then they turn out this amazing stuff. So the Da Vinci course starts on the 22nd of August, but we start selling the course beforehand. And if you want to get on that course, you have to be on the list. So it's psychotactics.com/DaVinci. And that's DAVINCI. So psychotactics.com, Da Vinci. There is also the headline course, which is coming up. And that course starts in September. So that's the 6th of September. Again, you have to be on the Psychotactics list. So go to psychotactics.com, subscribe for the newsletter, and you'll get the notification. It's winter here in Psychotactics land. Yes, our winter starts in June. And everyone went from t-shirts to sweaters and double sweaters. I am still in my t-shirt. I still go for my walk every morning in a t-shirt and shorts. The cold doesn't affect me. It has to get to freezing before I consider a coat. But enough about me. Get your testimonials going, and I'll see you in 5000 BC sometime. Bye for now.